Hello, my name is Stacy Arnold, and I am a Results Team Subject Matter Expert for ClinicalTrials.gov. ClinicalTrials.gov is a part of the National Center for Biotechnology Information in the National Library of Medicine at the National Institutes of Health. Today, I'll be discussing registering and reporting results to ClinicalTrials.gov. During this presentation, I'll cover the following topics. First, I'll provide a rationale for registering clinical trials and reporting summary level results to ClinicalTrials.gov. Next, I'll give an overview of registration and results reporting. Then, I'll review an online training platform that has been developed to facilitate the registration and reporting process, the PRS guided tutorials. And finally, I'll describe an effort that is underway to modernize the ClinicalTrials.gov website and PRS database. Why register clinical trials and report summary level results? One of the most compelling reasons for registering clinical trials is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or ICMJE, publication policy that requires that all clinical trials for all interventions be registered at the time the first participant is enrolled. More information about the policy can be obtained by accessing the link provided. In addition to this policy, Section 801 of the Food and Drug Administration Amendments Act of 2007, or FDA 801, requires the submission of summary results including adverse events. The final rule, or 42 CFR Part 11, was issued in 2016 and has been in effect since January of 2017. It clarifies and expands the regulatory requirements and procedures established by FDA 801 for submitting registration and results information to ClinicalTrials.gov. It is intended to make clear which trials must be submitted and when by, clarifying, for example, the definition of an applicable clinical trial, or ACT. Review the noted resources for more information about what classifies a record as an ACT. In conjunction with the release of the final rule in 2016, the NIH issued a policy to promote broad and responsible dissemination of information from NIH-funded clinical trials. This policy requires that every clinical trial funded in whole or in part by NIH be registered on clinicaltrials.gov and have summary results information posted in a timely manner, whether subject to FDA 801 and the final rule or not. The policy has been in effect for applications submitted for funding in January 2017 or later, as well as for trials initiated from that time onward. Finally, there are local institutional and organizational policies that require registration and results reporting, such as the requirement by the Department of Veterans Affairs that trials be reported to clinicaltrials.gov as a condition of funding. More information about these policies can be found by accessing the links provided. The general requirements of the final rule stipulate that the responsible party for an ACT must register the ACT on clinicaltrials.gov no later than 21 days after enrollment of the first participant. It further requires that the ACT be updated at least once a year, with some information requiring more timely updates. For example, the study start date should be revised from anticipated to actual within 30 days of enrollment of the first participant, and the primary and study completion dates should be revised from anticipated to actual within 30 days of meeting completion criteria for those fields. Finally, the final rule stipulates that summary results, including adverse events, be submitted no later than 1 year after the trial's primary completion date, though delays are allowed in some circumstances. Access the noted links for more information about how to determine the responsible party for a trial. Apart from the noted requirements for reporting to clinicaltrials.gov, there are practical reasons for sharing information through this mechanism. For example, there are a number of issues with relying upon publications alone to convey the results of clinical trials. Not all clinical trials are published in literature, so studies that fail to produce significant results or that are terminated due to safety concerns can be unknown to other researchers, potentially resulting in the duplication of efforts that are doomed to meet the same end. In other cases, publications might include only partial results, again failing to share results that are not deemed significant, or results might be reconfigured to address a different question than was the original focus, leading to a different interpretation of the study than was originally intended. As a consequence, the incomplete disclosure of research results can impede the scientific process. Further, the implications for incomplete reporting extend beyond the science to potentially affecting the patient population. Trial results, whether significant or not significant, inform medical decisions and determine which research opportunities will be further explored. Since clinical trials depend on volunteers, it is important to honor their time and effort to encourage continued participation in the future. In summary, there are many public benefits to access to clinical trial information on ClinicalTrials.gov. Primarily, transparent reporting meets an ethical obligation to human subjects. Trial registration promotes patient access to enrollment in clinical trials, and the report of clinical trial results informs future research and funding decisions, mitigates the information bias that can stem from non-publication or altered representation of study results, allows the research community to evaluate adherence to the pre-specified study protocol, and by extension, the integrity of the research, and helps to prevent duplication of trials of unsafe or ineffective interventions, and provide access to data that can be used to support evidence-based medicine. All of these benefits of transparency contribute to an increased public trust in clinical research. To obtain more information about the final rule, you can visit prsinfo.clinicaltrials.gov. This page includes links to the final rule webinar series, frequently asked questions, data element definitions, and the PRS User's Guide. In the next section, I'll provide a brief overview of registration and results reporting to ClinicalTrials.gov. The ClinicalTrials.gov website was designed to not only satisfy the legal requirements described in the first part of this presentation, but to promote objective, standardized reporting. The database is intended to facilitate good reporting practices, including adherence to publishing and regulatory guidelines. It provides structured data entry to ensure complete reporting and to make the review of submissions more efficient. The consistent display of data elements across records also allows for ready comparison of published trials, and the database structure supports detailed searches of record content. With the structured presentation and adherence to legal requirements in mind, it is important to note that these requirements do not prescribe how a study should be conducted. Further, the database is intended to capture summary-level results when the primary completion date is met or at the end of the trial. It is not intended for participant-level reporting, nor should interim results be reported. The database is structured to capture information in tables and to be understandable to readers of the medical literature. Conclusive language or discussion of results is not permitted. The intent is to provide the results of investigations and statistical analyses without interpretation. Finally, submission of results is not required for registered studies that are not subject to the final rule, to NIH policy, or to other funding policies. For the purposes of adhering to the requirements of the law, the deadline for submitting results to ClinicalTrials.gov is independent of publication status. Submitting results to ClinicalTrials.gov is not considered prior publication and will not interfere with publication of results in a journal. However, failure to register the trial will interfere with publication, as it is in direct conflict with the policy outlined by the ICMJE. ClinicalTrials.gov records are linked via their assigned NCT number to publications, either via the References module in the Protocol section of the record, or by automatic indexing on the ClinicalTrials.gov website. Therefore, report of results to ClinicalTrials.gov is complementary to publication and can be considered a way to fully represent the results of the trial. Registration of the ClinicalTrials.gov record captures the following types of information. Details transferred over from the study protocol document help to populate the study description, conditions and keywords, study design, arms, groups, and interventions, and outcome measures modules in the protocol section. Recruitment information is represented in the eligibility and contacts and locations modules. And additional information about the trial is captured in the sponsor collaborators, oversight, study identification, study status, IPD sharing statement, and references modules. For example, the study identification module is the place to report the study title and type, that is, whether it is an interventional, observational, or expanded access study, as well as the associated grant number. The Study Status module is the place to indicate the anticipated or actual dates for starting and completing the study. The Results section of the record captures two types of information, scientific and administrative. The scientific modules of the Results section include participant flow, baseline and demographic characteristics, outcome measures, including pre-specified primary and secondary outcomes and scientifically appropriate tests of statistical significance, adverse events information, and limitations and caveats. The administrative modules capture the results point of contact for the study, as well as any restrictions on the principal investigator that impact his or her ability to discuss or publish study results. For studies with a primary completion date on or after January 18, 2017, a protocol and statistical analysis plan are required to be reported by the time results are submitted. The informed consent form is optional except for those trials subject to report in accordance with the revised Common Rule. An example of a study that has been posted on ClinicalTrials.gov and that includes all three types of documents is shown to the right. The protocol and statistical analysis plan can be provided in a single document or as separate components, and should include all amendments to the protocol approved by the Human Subjects Review Board before the time of submission that apply to all the study locations. Each document should include a cover page with the official title of the study as entered on ClinicalTrials.gov, the NCT number, and the date on which that version of the document was completed. The submission may redact sensitive details, including personally identifiable information and trade secret or confidential commercial information. The documents must be PDF-A format to prohibit any issues accessing the information in future, and they must be in English since they will be posted to the ClinicalTrials.gov website. The revised Common Rule requires that one consent form be posted on a publicly available federal website within a specific time frame for any trial conducted or supported by a Common Rule department or agency. The federal websites that satisfy this reporting requirement include ClinicalTrials.gov as well as Regulations.gov, and the compliance date for this provision went into effect in January of 2019. In the next part of the presentation, I'll provide a brief overview of the content and features of an online training designed to help users become familiar with the process for submitting information to ClinicalTrials.gov, the PRS Guided Tutorials. The PRS Guided Tutorials were created to serve as an online version of our Train the Trainer workshop, an in-person training for PRS administrators. The online tutorials are designed to provide step-by-step instructions for entry of information into the PRS, with an overview of the registration, document upload, and results modules, and explanations of the data elements contained therein. They also include tips for how to avoid issues when submitting records for quality control review, and provide examples of data entry for a variety of study designs. The PRS Guided Tutorials include an introduction, quick overview guides to familiarize users with navigating tutorial content, sets of tutorials representative of the protocol, document, and results sections of a ClinicalTrials.gov record, and a PDF library that includes all tutorial content in a single location. The registration and results tutorial sets each include an introductory tutorial, a series of module-specific tutorials, and a record review tutorial. The list of results tutorials is shown here to the right as an example. The tutorials are designed to be used in order but can be accessed independently as needed. They are also accessible on multiple platforms to facilitate their use alongside entry of information into the PRS, and they are resizable so that they can be pulled up alongside the PRS database in a separate window on the same screen. The PRS Guided Tutorials can be accessed from several pages on the public site, including the Support Materials and Training Materials pages. They can also be accessed from within the PRS via help links throughout the user interface. The former means of access takes the user to the landing page or main menu for the tutorials, while the latter takes the user to content that is specific for the module of the PRS within which they are working. In the next few slides, I'll describe the content of the tutorials, and afterward, I'll walk through some tutorial features. The introduction for the guided tutorials provides a general overview of the tutorial content and the ways to navigate through the pages. Quick overview guides briefly describe how to use the tutorials to enter a new registration, enter initial results and upload study documents, and update a study record. Each tutorial page is available in PDF format. Each PDF file can be accessed at the top of the page and downloaded for various purposes, such as printing or saving a copy, or sharing a copy with colleagues. The PDF library page provides a one-stop location wherein all of the PDFs covering each page of tutorial content can be accessed for ease of download. All tutorial pages include an overview of the content that will be discussed for the given module or page. In this example, the purpose of the participant flow module is defined, and the translation of information from a study's consort diagram to a structured participant flow table is depicted. Most tutorial pages also include links to relevant resources. For example, in the Participant Flow Information tutorial, links to the Participant Flow Data Preparation Checklist and to a Participant Flow template are provided to inform the user about ways in which to prepare for the entry of information into the module. The Results Data Element Definitions link takes users directly to the section of the document that defines the data elements pertinent to the module. Finally, a link is provided for the user to access the results review criteria to help guide successful completion of information entry. The tutorials provide stepwise instruction for entry of information into each module of a record. Accompanying figures display entry of information for a parallel study design as an example, but the walkthrough can be used to guide entry of information for any type of study. The tutorials cover additional content not described in the stepwise entry process by providing answers to common questions. In addition, completed results tables for the parallel study design as well as 9 additional study types are included. Each study example provides links to a fictional manuscript and full example ClinicalTrials.gov record for the study design, so that the table can be visualized in the context of the entire record entry. In addition, tables in the Participant Flow tutorial are annotated to help clarify why the demonstrated presentation of information was chosen. Each set or section of tutorials can be independently collapsed within the side menu to narrow the focus to specific content. In addition to resizing the tutorials by adjusting the size of the browser window within which they are viewed, a user can use the hamburger icon at the top of each page to collapse the menu if more space is needed to visualize the page, or to expand the menu if the user would like to navigate to a different page. The tutorials can be searched for terms that describe specific content. The search is initiated by clicking on the magnifying glass icon at the top of the side menu as shown on the left, then typing the search term in the pop-up window as shown in the middle of this slide. The search returns a list of pages wherein the requested content can be found, and as shown on the right, all instances of the selected search term are highlighted in yellow on the page. Content for common questions and for study examples is collapsed for ease of navigation and can be accessed by clicking on an accordion header. The figures within, as well as figures that are displayed as part of the stepwise process of information entry, can be enlarged by hovering the cursor over top and clicking to expand. Once an image is expanded, it fills the browser window, but it might still be difficult to see. A magnifier feature is available that allows a user to increase the zoom level. The magnifier can be turned on and the level of magnification can be adjusted by accessing buttons in the top right corner of the screen or by rotating the mouse's scroll wheel. Additional buttons are available to provide help with the feature or to exit the image zoom. The zoom can also be exited with a click of the mouse. At the conclusion of the information entry process, the user should distribute the record as needed to obtain feedback from colleagues about the accuracy and completeness of the submission. The PRS generates system validation messages, including errors, warnings, and notes that should be evaluated and addressed before the record is submitted. However, other apparent errors, deficiencies, and inconsistencies might exist that should be rectified before the record is submitted for quality control review. Issues frequently identified in the QC process that prevent publication of a record to the public site are termed common major issues and should be addressed as well. 5 common issues that can receive major comments during quality control review are described for the protocol section of the record at the end of the registration tutorials in the Addressing Common Major Issues and Submitting Protocol Registration tutorial. Similarly, 5 common major issues are described for the results section of the record at the end of the results tutorials in the Addressing Common Major Issues and Submitting Results tutorial. For each example of a major issue, introductory text is provided to discuss related review criteria and to describe how one might resolve the issue. The general ClinicalTrials.gov review criteria state that information in the protocol and results sections of the record must be clear and informative, logical and internally consistent, valid and meaningful, and exemplify appropriate use of the PRS database structure. The quality control review process is not equivalent to peer review in that no judgments are made regarding the scientific value of the reported information. In addition, information provided in the record is not verified against external sources or the attached documentation. The onus is on the data provider to fully and faithfully represent the study as conducted. The major issues discussed in the review tutorials for registration and results are listed here. Major issues commonly identified in the registration review include missing interventions, unclear or multiple outcome measures, and vague or multiple timeframes. Major issues commonly identified during results review include insufficient scale information, invalid or inconsistent unit of measure, written results or conclusions, unclear measures, or internal inconsistencies between different parts of a record. The tutorials provide examples of each major issue, as well as possible solutions to resolve the issue. In this example of a major issue that might be detected during review of the protocol section, the remove all intervention is described in the arm description for the placebo arm, but it hasn't been listed as an intervention or assigned to a study arm. The issue is resolved, in this case, by adding an arm to represent participants who received the remove all intervention, and adding a remove all intervention to assign to the arm. In this example of a major issue that might be detected during a review of the results section of a record, the information provided in the measure description is insufficient to interpret the data. The issue is resolved in this case by revising the measure description to include the minimum and maximum values on the scale and by indicating how to interpret those values. In the final portion of the presentation, I'll give a quick overview of modernization efforts that are currently underway at ClinicalTrials.gov. The goal of modernization is to ensure that ClinicalTrials.gov continues to be a trusted and valued public health resource that provides maximum value to the public while serving its mission well into the future. In service of this goal, the modernization effort aims to improve the user experience and upgrade the infrastructure and processes to enhance sustainability of the PRS database and ClinicalTrials.gov website, all while continuing to support the legal, regulatory, and policy framework described earlier in this presentation. The modernization process involves close scrutiny of the clinical trial research lifecycle to identify opportunities for making registration and results reporting a more efficient part of the process. In the first year of the modernization effort, ClinicalTrials.gov engaged with stakeholders to determine approaches to take to achieve this goal. A request for information was issued in December of 2019, and feedback was gathered and summarized. ClinicalTrials.gov worked with an NLM Board of Regents working group to determine an approach and specifications, to develop a modernization roadmap, and to enhance internal business processes. In the current period of implementation, ClinicalTrials.gov has been conducting user testing and evaluation and continuing to engage with stakeholders. The goal is to promote a seamless end-to-end process in the trial life cycle by upgrading the system infrastructure. The RFI garnered over 250 responses that covered topics including PRS information submission, website functionality, and data standards. Over 70 interviews have been conducted with individuals representing 3 primary user groups, including patients and their advocates, data submitters, and data researchers. User testing has also been employed to obtain feedback about wireframes and prototypes. As updates are made to the PRS database and ClinicalTrials.gov website, beta versions of each site will be accessible in parallel to the current sites. Users will be able to access each beta version via the current interface and will still be able to use the older version if they prefer that experience in the short term. Features will be added in an iterative process as they are developed, and the sites will exist in parallel until the beta versions eventually replace the current content. The goals of the first beta releases are to introduce the new platforms in a way that promotes real-world evaluation of system performance to gather input for further development, while simultaneously enhancing the user experience. For the PRS, initial efforts aim to improve record workflow and the functionalities involved in managing record portfolios. For the ClinicalTrials.gov website, the goal is to provide foundational site features that are more inclusive for all types of users. To access the beta PRS, users will log into the PRS via the current user interface, and they can use a link to access and try out the new beta user interface. The beta site will use the same data as the current PRS, but will implement new components as they are developed to deliver the greatest user value. The back-end process for updating the PRS will be invisible to PRS users, and data saved in the beta site will also be saved in the current PRS. This effort to maintain the current interface while developing a newer version is done with the understanding that PRS users are accustomed to the current workflow and might take some time to adjust to a new experience. Similar to past updates, the beta version will first be released in the PRS test system before being implemented in the production site version. We will communicate clearly and well in advance about release timelines so that organizations can prepare for the transition. We understand that organizations have developed processes and educational materials that are centered on the current PRS, and we want to make sure that they have ample time to adapt. Shown on this slide is a draft version of the first planned upgrade, which involves a revamping of the PRS record list. Feedback from user testing has been positive, with users praising the modern and more intuitive design. Users will have the ability to email staff directly from the record list, and they'll be able to customize the display by reordering, adding, or hiding columns, and by creating multi-column filters. Additional content is being incorporated into the list, including more study dates identified by type. In addition, customized content will be available for download in both Excel and CSV formats. The beta version of the ClinicalTrials.gov website has also been developed to represent a more modern look and feel, as well as to facilitate ease of use on mobile devices. Efforts have been made to make the information on the site easier to understand, and the site utilizes a new cloud-based infrastructure. Our most recent modernization webinar was held on October 7th and provided a more detailed preview of the features that are to come. Webinar recordings and materials can be found on the Modernization webpage. We anticipate launching beta versions by the end of this year and will continue to communicate with the public as the time for release approaches. Once the sites have gone live, we'll continue to engage with stakeholders for follow-up and feedback. Follow the link on this slide to access the Modernization website for past recordings and future updates. You can stay up to date with news about modernization efforts by subscribing to our Hot Off the PRS e-bulletin via the link provided. On this slide are listed some additional resources to facilitate record submission, as well as to provide information about requirements and policies related to reporting clinical trial data to ClinicalTrials.gov. And here is a short list of relevant publications. Additional publications of interest are highlighted at the link included on this page. With that, I will conclude my presentation and ask that any questions be directed to register@clinicaltrials.gov. This email address can also be used to request one-on-one assistance with results submission via teleconference with results team staff. Thank you for your attention.